So 2022 has come and gone, and all things considered, it was a really solid year for games. We had new installments in the classic quality series of Bayonetta, Xenoblade Chronicles, God of War, and Horizon. We had Elden Ring, which cleaned up at various award shows. We had one of the best tactical RPGs in recent history in Triangle Strategy, and a really good spin-off for a tactical RPG in Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hope. Even Sonic had a game that some people didn't have bad things to say about. That said, I played absolutely none of those games last year for various reasons. Whether it was because I didn't get a chance to get around to them with Triangle Strategy and Fire Emblem, was waiting for them to go on sale, as is the case with Elden Ring, or because I wanted to beat a previous game in the series first before starting the next one, as is the case with Xenoblade Chronicles 3, etc., etc. But I still played a lot of good games last year, and I'm going to talk about them. So here are my top 10 games of 2022 in no particular order. But first, we're going to start with a little bit of negativity. Most disappointing game of the year. Technically, this was a game that came out before 2022, but it had a major, for lack of a better term, relaunch in 2022. It's Fall Guys. I put so many hours into Fall Guys, and this year it relaunched to become free to play. And with that came a lot of bad monetization practices, minuscule amounts of experience or fame when you participate in games, which means it becomes harder to get certain cosmetics that were once really easy to get, and the cosmetics you want are now, paywalled, which means there is now less incentive to play. Not to mention Mediatonic still continues to not really listen to feedback or to the people who beta test the game, and just weird decisions like the honestly kind of shoddily implemented skill-based matchmaking, removing or shifting of rounds, shifting in a sense where like you can't play team-based games on the main show anymore. Now you're restricted to playing those in the squad mode, which means you're probably going to be paired with randos, which means you're going to have a bad time because now your success relies entirely on your team as opposed to just relying on a team for what is potentially 1 or 2 rounds on a main show. And continuing to not address long-standing bugs that occur throughout the game's life. Like, the same charm that it once had is now gone. To me, at least. And yeah, it is nice that more people are able to play the game now because it is free to play and on pretty much every console now. But I find myself no longer having fun with it whenever I start it up. That is alleviated a bit when I'm playing with friends, because then I'm not really focused on unlocking things or winning. I'm more so focused on just having fun. But this was a game where I could enjoy playing it single player too, and now it's just a shell of its former self, and it's really disappointing. Even when I look online, I don't see a hype for it that it once had. Even their Twitter has kind of died down a bit on the hype, when it used to be like always popping and sharing jokes and showing teasers for new stuff, and it's just not the same, and that's disappointing. But never mind that shit, let's move on to the positive things. With the next prelim category, best game I played last year that didn't come out last year, and that's Super Auto Pets. I've put in 330 hours into this free-to-play game. It's just a fun simple auto battler PvP game. You got your animals, you got a little allowance of money, you got to use said money each round to pick the right animals and or food to implement a strategy to beat your opponents. It's a really easy game to get into. Despite being free to play, it's not riddled with shady monetization. Sure, there's cosmetics and new animal packs that you can pay for, but you can still unlock cosmetics through normal play, and it's not a slog to unlock those. And they spice the game up with weekly animal packs that include animals from the base free pack, as well as some of the DLC paid packs, so that you can enjoy trying out new animals without having to pay for new animals. And on top of all that, games of this are really quick. Matches start up immediately, a full game in the game's arena mode where you have to win like 10 battles on now 5 lives. I'd say on average, one arena mode run lasts from about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how much you're min-maxing your strategies. It's just an all-around fun, chill auto battler. And it's really nice to see the devs put so much into balancing the animals and releasing new packs of animals regularly. Thumbs up from me. And now our feature presentation. My top 10 games of 2022 in no particular order, besides alphabetical. First up we have Cult of the Lamb. It's a game that's 50% roguelike and 50% colony sim. You're a dude that's starting up his own cult. You venture out into the lands to fight enemies and other gods, recruit new people to bring back to your little colony, spruce up your colony with things to fit their needs, as well as to help build the colony further, and Bob's your uncle. Combat is your standard sort of semi-fast paced isometric brawling style, similar to the likes of Hades, and it's just an all-around really fun game. I mean, I like roguelikes, so I like that. It's dripping with charm, and even the colony building aspect isn't a slog. The colony building aspects range from finding a way to make sure that the cultists are fed every day, that they're properly indoctrinated and punished for any wrongdoing. You can also give them gifts to keep them happy, as well as decorating the place, talking to them, etc., etc. It gets a thumbs up from me, and it's really helping me plan out how I'm going to set up my own cult. I mean, it's really scratching the itch I've been having of wanting to play a city / colony management type game, and is in no way indicative of how I would run a real life cult. Let's just move on. Up next we have Cuphead in the Delicious Last Course. It may have taken years for the Cuphead DLC to come out, but oh man, was it worth the wait. All of the bosses were excellent. Like, while I love OG Cuphead, there were a few bosses that annoyed me to no end. I'm looking at you, Grim Matchstick. None of the bosses in the DLC really annoyed me. They were really creative. Some had some cool references, and the fights themselves were just really, really fun. The music is still as amazing as ever. The animations are still as amazing as ever. I just have nothing but good things to say about this DLC. It was really cool that some of the bosses even have alternate phases depending on how you perform during certain parts of the fights. The chess castle place where you have to beat all of the bosses there with parries was a bit weird, but still enjoyable, all things considered. The secret boss was really interesting, though not as hard as people were making it out to be. Like, there were some people that were saying the secret boss of the DLC and the final boss were both harder than anything in the main game, but I beat them both quicker than I beat some bosses in the main game. So yeah, that was a bit weird. But at the end of the day, different people find different things difficult for different reasons. And the inclusion of Miss Chalice as a playable character was also a nice touch. So yeah, the DLC might not be the longest, but the quality and the fun is there, and it is definitely worth checking out. Up next, we have Floppy Knights, a really fun tactical RPG slash deck building game, featuring the fantastic artwork of Marlo Daub, the artist for Dicey Dungeons, another game I absolutely love, and the music of Graham Nesbitt from Garden Story, a game I have not played but have heard really good things about. In this game, you build a deck of knights alongside various items and use them to your advantage on the various maps. The best thing I can say about the game is that it just makes me happy. The story is lighthearted and fun. The music is definitely amazing. Marlo's artwork is always a joy to look at. And the game is just, to me at least, chill and relaxing. You get plenty of time to build your deck and plan your moves out on the field. You don't feel rushed. There's no permadeath like in Fire Emblem. If you lose a map, you can just hop right back in. It's just an all-around pleasant, fun, and funny game. The writing is so good. The characters are all great. Like, it's just pleasant. The fact that it's not as hardcore of a tactical RPG like Fire Emblem or Valkyria Chronicles or Final Fantasy Tactics might be a turnoff for some. But if you're someone who's trying to ease into tactical RPGs, see what they're all about, this would be a pretty nice starting point because it doesn't throw anything too complicated at you. It's definitely worth checking out. And it also gets regular updates. Speaking of which, I need to boot it back up and see what's been added since I last played, because it had a pretty major content update in December, I believe. Yeah, Floppy Knights. Get it. It's good. You won't regret it. You'll laugh. You'll jam out. You'll form attachments to your knights before sending them off into combat. But hey, you know, they're fine with that. It's okay. They're completely fine with it. And if they die, they just come back. Hell, you'll even learn what a floppy disk is. It's what we used to use back in the day to store data. We didn't have these fancy flash drives or external hard drives. We had floppy disks. If you were lucky, you could store a whole 8 Word documents on one of them. Yeah. Just be sure they weren't too big, but yeah. They were what we had at the time. It was the best we could do. Anyway, moving on to the next game, we have King of Fighters 15. Yo. King of Fighters 15 is the newest installment in the long-running fighting game series, King of Fighters. It's got a bunch of new characters, it's got a bunch of old characters, it's got some new mechanics, it's an all-around fun fighting game. And really scratched a fighting game itch I've been having for a while. Because I'm not really a big Tekken guy. Admittedly, I've never played a Tekken, so maybe I would be into it if I gave it a shot. I was kind of burned out on Smash and Street Fighter. I still love those games, but yeah, after playing them for so long, you kind of want to just try out something new. I've never really been good at Arc System Works fighters, so as much as I really like Dragon Ball FighterZ, It just wasn't clicking with me. I just kept staying at like a really low skill level. It was nice to get a new King of Fighters game. I've always been a fan of the series. And all things considered, it's really kind of revitalized my enjoyment of fighting games. Like, I convinced a coworker of mine to pick it up too. We've been playing it every now and then. And it's just fun to follow the patch notes of something again and get hyped for DLC. And honestly, this enjoyment of it now kind of has me hyped for Street Fighter 6. Like, I don't think I would be as hyped for Street Fighter 6 if I hadn't played King of Fighters. I know that's a weird thing to say, but before this year, just hearing the rumors of Street Fighter 6 being a near announcement just had me kind of like, eh. But this revitalization of fighting games for me, mixed with how good it looks so far, it kind of actually has me looking forward to it. But yeah, back to King of Fighters. Not much to really say about it. It's just an all-around solid fighting game. It's fluid, easy to get into, but of course hard to master a character. It has combos and inputs that can help first-time players of a fighting game, as well as a decent tutorial system. I'd still say Skullgirls might be the benchmark for an amazing fighting game tutorial, but King of Fighters 15 is relatively beginner friendly. I love the cast of fighters. It's great seeing some of my longtime faves. Going back to the early King of Fighters games, Capcom vs. SNK, Final Fight. It's just good stuff. The nostalgia is strong for me with this, and I'm glad I got it twice. Once on PS4 when it was on sale, but then I didn't play it at first, and then again on Steam when my coworker friend caved in and bought it during, I believe, the Thanksgiving Black Friday Steam sale. So yeah, PS4 version is still sealed, by the way, so you know, if you're watching this and you want King of Fighters 15, you know, shoot me a message and I'll send it to you. PS4 games are region free, right? Yeah, they are. I'll send it free of charge too. Like, I'll pay for shipping. I don't mind. If you want it, that is. You know, just saying. Yeah, King of Fighters, really smooth, really fun fighting game, and yeah, I'm glad it really revitalized my love for the genre, and I'm looking forward to the remaining DLC for it and just other fighters going forward. And especially with the rumblings of Capcom and SNK gauging interest of things, and you know, we got this new King of Fighters coming out fairly close to a new Street Fighter, and if hype for both series continues, we could get, Capcom vs. SNK 3. I mean, nothing's been confirmed, but the energy is there, and I'm just kind of putting that out into the universe to hopefully manifest it. Just saying. Anyway, up next, the next game in the list, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Kirby's first truly 3D adventure, and honestly, it might be the best Kirby game in the series. It's a chill Kirby adventure, though, I mean, chill up until you fight certain endgame bosses that are not playing around. They gonna give you the business. But the levels themselves are really fun to explore and play around with the new copy abilities. And while this game didn't have as many copy abilities as some Kirby games, it did do a thing where you could essentially evolve the abilities that are in the game to get different effects out of them that you could then use in the various levels. Then there's the hub town that just fills up with more and more things to do as you advance throughout the game. The callbacks to past Kirby games. I don't think there was any level I didn't enjoy playing or felt was a chore to get through. The puzzles are fun to figure out. The final sequence is up there, honestly, and like the upper tier of Kirby final sequences. Like, I always felt Robobot had the best ending sequence. This game's kind of up there. If you like Kirby, you're gonna like this. And I mean, it's Kirby in 3D. Like, it's amazing. And here's hoping they keep this formula up for the next new mainline Kirby game. I mean, the next Kirby game we're getting in general is a remake of Return to Dreamland, which is fine. You know, I'm not sure if I'm gonna get it. Like, I don't think they're adding too much new that would convince me to, like, you know, get it again. But good news for people that might have missed out on it when it was on Wii. But yeah, I'm all for seeing another 3D Kirby in the future. It seems like they only scratched the surface of what you could do in such a format, and I just want to see them explore it more. So yeah, Kirby. It doesn't suck. I mean, Kirby sucks. Literally, you know, like, that's kind of his thing. You know, he sucks the enemies or inanimate objects and gains their powers. But the game itself is great. It's excellent. It's arguably the best Kirby game ever made. Just saying. Anyway, up next on the list, we have Live Alive. Now, I know in past videos I usually don't include remakes of games in my list or expansions, which I already broke in this video with, you know, Cuphead and the Delicious Last Course. But the remake of Live Alive is just, it's night and day. It was already a really good Super Nintendo game, but this remake, wow, is the first time the game was localized officially for the US. You can find ROMs of the original Super Nintendo game to play it. It has been translated by really devoted fans. But this official remake, oh my god, it looks beautiful, because it's using the same HD 2D engine that you see in, you know, Octopath Traveler, Triangle Strategy, etc. The remixed music is out of this world. The voice actors put in work. And as someone who played the original, the end sequence really subverted my expectations, because it completely changes the end game. Honestly, for the better. Unfortunately, Squeenix was being kind of a jerk about the final chapter of the game and was DMCAing people who were like streaming or uploading that part. Hopefully they've backed down now that the game's been out for a while. And yeah, I know they would want to keep that a secret so that it would be a surprise for even people who played the original, but come on, Squeenix, don't be like that. But yeah, it's just an all-around fantastic remake of what was already just a really great game. If you've never seen it, it is a turn-based JRPG that borrows some tactical RPG elements for the fights, namely just throwing you on a grid where you're fighting against the enemies or bosses, and your positioning on the grid is very important, because certain attacks have certain areas of effect. You can move your character around on the field while the bosses and the enemies are moving too. But that's just one aspect. The different chapters also bring about different gameplay elements too. Without getting too much into spoilers, you have one chapter that is essentially a murder mystery. You have one chapter that involves you setting up traps for the bad guys of that chapter, which will ultimately affect how the boss fight goes. You have one chapter that's stealth based. You have one chapter that's a boss rush. Like, it's a really innovative game. If you've never played the original, I highly recommend picking this game up. And if you have played the original, I still highly recommend picking this game up. It is an excellent example of how a game's remake should be. Squeenix went above and beyond for this remake, and it is definitely worth your time. Up next, we have Not for Broadcast. This one kind of flew under the radar, all things considered. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have heard of it had I not got it offered to me as a review code earlier in the year. Not for Broadcast is a, with lack of a better term, TV producer sim. You're acting as the guy in the back of a news station where you're controlling the camera angles of the show, censoring out any bad words or bad segments, cutting to commercial, making sure the signal is fine, etc., etc. At face value, that sounds boring, but it's been, like a better term, gamified really well. Not to mention, there's a really deep story that's going on that's playing out both in the news segments themselves and in your little family life segments that happen in between the shows. Choices you make during the news segments as well as in your daily life will affect how the game progresses. And let me tell you, things get deep. The main plot line is this political party that has come to power who claim to be for the people. But as you get more and more into the game, you begin to see that things might not be what they seem. And then there's a rebel group that shows up that you then have the choice to help or hinder ads or allowing certain messages to get across over the news. Your own family is affected by this political party as well. Things escalate, and it's ridiculous just how deep the story gets. But it's not a completely serious game either. There were a lot of moments in this game where I was just laughing like uncontrollably. The writers and the actors all did amazing jobs, and yeah, this is an FMV game. It actually is in the Guinness Book of Records for having like the most FMV footage ever recorded for a video game. Like, that's how many branching paths there are. Like, there's just hundreds of hours of footage recorded for this. It is also very difficult. Full disclosure though, it is a bit on the difficult side to keep up with what you need to do on the panels, because you might get caught up just watching the story play out or having fun just watching like the banter or the funny moments, the music videos. It was distracting to say the least. But the devs were nice enough to have it where you can watch back the shows uninterrupted when you're done, which, yeah, like that did help soften the blow of, you know, having to pay attention to my panels as opposed to watching everything. But sometimes you still just get caught up in it. You're just like, dang, yo, this is wow. Or just jamming out to a musical performance. The music in this game, like, just, oh my god. This really is one of my favorite games of the year. It's innovative, it's unique. I cannot recommend it enough. And the fact that it's relatively unknown is a bit of a tragedy. It's a game that's definitely worth your time. Up next we have Pokemon Scarlet. Mechanically, this could be the worst game on this list. It is a game that has quite a few bugs in it. I haven't encountered anything majorly bad or game breaking, but I have encountered a few like graphical things in the game, and there was a memory leak in it as well. It does struggle to keep a stable frame rate in some areas. In some ways it was a bit of a step down from, honestly, Pokemon Sword and Shield and Legends Arceus, and all in all it could have been a better game. That said, this is probably the most fun I have ever had playing a Pokemon game, honestly, since like Gen 4, where I was playing Soul Silver at school with my friends. Despite all of the little negative ones for what this game could have been, it's so much fun, and that's all that matters to me. The music is excellent. The new Pokemon are all really just neat. I kept changing my team around because there were just so many new Pokemon I wanted to use. The fact that the game is open world and you're essentially forging your own path through the game, the exploration, the Pokemon catching, the way the gyms are just set up, little mini games and challenges for you to do in order to fight the gym leader. The new antagonist team is really fun. The Titan Pokemon storyline is honestly really sad, but still really good. This is the first Pokemon game in a long time where I don't hate any character. So yeah, while I will be honest and say that like there are some performance issues with the game, I would still highly recommend it for people who might not have played a Pokemon in a while, and even for those who have been keeping up with Pokemon over the years. It's just so much fun, like to the point that I've even gotten back into competitive Pokemon because of this. I'm building teams, yo. That's something I haven't done since Gen 4, where I was playing Soul Silver at school with my friends. This is definitely a Pokemon game you do not want to miss. And as stated before, the open world aspect of it just adds another little wrinkle to it that can make the game as hard or as easy for you as you want it to be. Like, genuinely, this is the first Pokemon game in a long time where I actually lost in battles. That has not happened to me in like decades outside of the Elite Four. Like that just doesn't happen. Like when they started making your rivals easier, like starting with Gen 4, and even the gym leaders themselves would just be kind of like easy. Like, no, this game, they really made it so that it's not going to be a walk in the park, and it still has like some of the same QOL changes that have been added to the series over the years, i.e. showing you like what moves in your Pokemon's movesets are effective against your opponent, etc., etc. So while it might not be a perfect Pokemon game, it's definitely a fun Pokemon game. and it's worth your time. Up next we have Tunic, an isometric action-adventure game starring a tiny little fox. This is another one that kind of fell under the radar in a sense, to me at least. I was hyped for this game ever since I saw it teased at an E3 like years ago. I had it wishlisted ever since, and then as it was getting closer to release, like it started getting like a little groundswelling of support. There was hype for it, and it had a nice little bit of spotlight on it when it came out. Unfortunately, it came out like right before Elden Ring did. And the only reason I'm mentioning Elden Ring is because Tunic does have Souls-like aspects to it. Like it does the whole Souls-like thing of, you know, if you die at this one place, you lose like your experience, so you have to go back to where you died to reclaim it. It doesn't explicitly tell you what you need to do. It just leaves you to exploring on your own. And the boss fights are on a grand scale and are quite difficult. And yeah, when Elden Ring came out, some, not all, of the people who would be interested in Tunic moved on to that. But this is still definitely a game worth checking out, whether or not you're a Soulsborne fan or not. That was a redundant sentence, but oh well. The game also does this really neat thing of, okay, well, like, it goes back to the point I mentioned earlier, in that it doesn't explicitly tell you what you need to do. Throughout the game, you'll find pages of a video game instruction manual. The instruction manual is for Tunic. For example, the first page you find in the game shows you the controls for the game. But as you advance, you'll find pages that show like, oh, there's this forest that's connected to the main hub. So then, you the player will then be like, well, let me go check out this forest. You'll find pages that at first might mean absolutely nothing to you, but then as you advance on, you'll find out, oh wait, that page I found earlier can help me solve this puzzle here. And you'll find pages that help tie together the story of the game. It's just really innovative and neat. As I alluded to earlier, this is a bit of a tough game, but at no point did I ever feel frustrated with it. And with just the beautiful atmosphere, the calming music, and the overall feel of the game, exploration is really calming and just fun to do. Granted, until you're surrounded by a ton of enemies, but you know, you should have just been watching where you were going, just saying. But overall, it's a lovely game, and while it did fall into the, you know, video game release trap of coming out in the first third of the year and kind of falling under the radar by the time the end of the year comes around, that quite a few games tend to go through every year, it's still just really good. The quality is there. It's definitely worth picking up. You won't regret it. Tunic is great, yo. Plus, I mean, you're playing as a tiny fox. Like, that alone should sell it to you. Like, I don't make the rules here, okay? Anyway, final game of the year that made my list of top games of the year. I could have worded that sentence better. But yeah, it's Vampire Survivors. Technically, the game was released in early access in late December of 2021, but I didn't play it until 2022, and also 2022 is when it began to get most of its like really big updates and its full release, as well as a DLC. So yeah, Vampire Survivors is a really interesting take on a roguelike, in that you got a character that's auto-firing out their weapons as wave of enemies are just barreling down on them. And you have to essentially survive. Runs have a maximum time of 30 minutes that you need to make it to consider the level beaten. And you get experience and money throughout the waves of enemies. Experience letting you power up your weapons or get new weapons, and money being used to unlock permanent buffs, new characters, and that's it, just permanent buffs and new characters. And if you don't like how the buffs are going, you can always refund the money to reallocate the money, or don't do it if you want to just really push yourself and see how well you can do. The game is highly addictive. Like, I'm looking at my playtime and I feel that might be incorrect, because I feel I played this way more than what it's reporting. But apparently I only played this for 105 hours. But yeah, it's a highly addictive game with tons of replayability, and the dev has put in so much work into it, and they claim to be done with adding content to the game, like adding free content, and is now maybe doing the occasional DLC. But I mean, there were multiple times throughout its early access period where they would be like, okay, that's it, up until like the real release later on in the year. And then would just be like a couple weeks later, like, okay, I actually added like a couple new characters and here's this new stage, but that's it for real now. And then a couple weeks later it'll be even more new stuff. But yeah, the dev is still continuing to actively work on it and tweak it, and even the DLC that was recently added, like, I mean, already the game was just really, really good to me, but then the DLC just like raised it up another level, and it's really cool to just see like how far the dev has come since like the game was first in early access. Not to mention, this game also sparked a ton of copycat games on Steam. And I don't use that term negatively, which I know it has negative connotations, but this game's success spawned a lot of clones, quite a few of which are on the level of this one, while adding their own like spin on the gameplay or aesthetics or things of that nature. And for a game like this to just blow up as it did and inspire so many other people, it's just really neat. It's just really neat when an indie game does that. And it's also neat just seeing so many people just like, this Vampire Survivors game, I'll give it a shot, I'll see how it is. And then like 4 hours later, they're just like, oh, I've been playing this whole time. Wow. Like, just something about that, it just fills me with happiness to see other people enjoy this or like get into it and just play it and recommend it to others. The snowball effect is real, y'all. But yeah, it's a simple enough game to get into. It's cheap, it's addictive, highly, highly recommend it. What other game lets you feel like an absolute god of destruction as you're just mowing down hordes of the undead? But yep, that be my list of favorite games of 2022. What games did you play last year that you really enjoyed? Let me know down below. And I hope you enjoyed this here video, and I will see you all next time. Went into this thinking it was going to be like a little 10-minute affair. My total recording time currently is 1 hour 33. Might have underestimated just how long I would be talking about some of these games. I regret nothing, because I like talking about things I enjoy. And all of the games I mentioned today, outside of Fall Guys, greatly deserve that time and then some, because these were fantastic games that released in a year that was, as I said at the beginning, a somewhat stacked year for games. But yeah, I've gone on long enough about them. Like I said, comment down below what your favorite games of 2022 were, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.